Hello and welcome to this lecture on cardiovascular pathology. And in today's session, we're actually going to talk about diseases of the arteries. And I am Sri Kumar, Professor of Pathology and Director for Research and Postgraduate Studies at Masa University, Malaysia, who is taking you through the session. Now, you already had a session on diseases of arteries. That was part one. And in that, we discussed about aneurysms and atherosclerosis. In today's session, we're actually going to focus on vasculitis and vascular lesions. And basically, vasculitis is a group of disorders that destroys the blood vessels by inflammation. So before we move on to actual pathology, we need to understand the basic structure of the arteries. Now, all across the body, you find arteries into three sizes. The large ones are called the elastic arteries. These are the aorta and its branches. The medium-sized arteries are called muscular arteries. Now, these are slightly smaller than the branches of the aorta, such as the renal artery, the coronary artery, and so on. The small arteries are those that are slightly smaller than 2 millimeters in diameter. So, these are the smallest arteries that supply all the actual parenchymatic structures in the tissues and the organs. And these arteries gradually end as the capillaries. The capillaries form the capillary bed. Of course, they go on to arterioles and then capillaries and then capillary bed, and then it goes on into veins. We also have arteries that supplies bigger blood vessels such as the aorta. Aorta itself needs a blood supply and we call this the vasa vasorum. The artery, when you cut it and microscopically observe it, you would find an inner layer of intima, middle layer of media, and an outer layer which is called adventitia. Now, how do we differentiate between an artery and a vein? Now, usually arteries are more round when compared to the vein, which is more flattened and it is more narrow. But the walls are the same. You have a tunica externa, the outer layer in both, a tunica media, which is the middle muscular layer, and the tunica intima, which actually contains the endothelium. But the difference is in the vein, the tunica media is smaller in thickness because there is less of muscle when compared to the artery where there is more of muscle. Because one thing we should remember is the artery carries blood all over the body and it carries oxygenated blood. So it needs to be more muscular to be able to carry blood at a higher force. Venous blood is just blood that is coming back to the heart. So the media is slightly smaller in thickness. So a vein can usually even be in a collapsed, flattened state. So vascular diseases are either congenital or they're related to atherosclerosis, hypertensive vascular diseases, and aneurysms. Now, all these we have discussed in previous classes. In fact, we have even discussed about various types of aneurysms, abdominal aortic aneurysms, syphilitic, and dissecting hematomas. So this session is a continuation of what we have discussed in the previous session where we move on to vasculitis. Now, vasculitis and the vascular lesions include Raynaud disease and various inflammatory disease which we call vasculitis. Itis means inflammation and vascule is blood vessel. So giant cell arteritis, Takayasu arteritis, polyarteritis nodosa, Kawasaki syndrome, Wegener's granulomatosis, thromboangiitis obliterans, and infectious arthritis. Now remember, all this is a group of diseases and the blood vessels are destroyed by inflammation. As much as this is listed under diseases of arteries, remember that vasculitis can involve both arteries and veins. Sometimes it can even involve inflammation of the lymphatic vessels, which we call as lymphangitis. This is also a type of vasculitis. The main feature in vasculitis is it is primarily caused by the leukocytes migrating towards the blood vessel wall and residual damage to the blood vessel wall. So, although this occurs in vasculitis, inflammation of the veins, which is phlebitis, and inflammation of arteries, which is arteritis, are separate entities.